welcome to Quick Take. I'm one of your hosts, Susie, along with James. How are you, James?
I'm good.
So we have a topic today about the change of leadership as it
Yes,
relates to technology,
that's
and I
right.
think it's pretty interesting. So give us a little bit of context,
Well,
James.
there's been a couple articles talking about the role of leadership, specifically the C-level, as it relates to AI. And I think that, AI is, overhyped and over talked about and over discussed for sure. Maybe not overhyped, but certainly over discussed. But I think, as we often do when on our show, we talk about leadership and some of the softer skills and some of the nuances that are related to it. There's a really interesting pivot that's occurring around AI. And I think that how leaders think about it we're in a unique situation. And I think it's worth evaluating this particular thing and how every C-level individual, how every senior leader needs to participate in the conversation.
I just was thinking about a client of mine that all of the C level were kind of arguing about who owned it. And so the COO was like, "It's mine," and she even said to me, "I need to tell the board and be very overt because the chief HR officer is breathing down my neck and he's talking about how it's his." But the CTO was like, "But I'm gonna own the technology." And so it was like the sexiest thing that they wanted to own. They wanted to make sure they had their stamp on it.
As you and I were talking before the show in the green room, because we have a green room,
We're so
that
special.
there's a great parallel between this and computers. And I think if you put yourself in the shoes of a C-level, of a group of executives, of a board of directors, not when the computer first came out, not when it was still a novelty, but when the actual desktop PC was kind of coming out, there was this early period where it was it was finance, right? Finance ran IT back in the day. And then
Yeah,
maybe IT got spun out, but largely people were like, "Well, that's that department." HR was
yeah,
like, "No, that's AT." Finance was like, "No, that's IT." Ops was like, "No, that's IT." We all look back on it and I go, "No, everybody had to use the computer. Every department
yeah,
had to get to the point where, like, where is software going to change my organization?" And software ate every department. Every
yeah,
department has a software component. And to what degree that department really embraces it. There's some HR groups that just take the software and just use it. Then there's some HR groups that are incredibly involved and really integrated with that tool and looking at how it interfaces with other things. And they're really involved in it. This is the same thing.
totally.
AI will draw across multiple verticals.
But I think what's interesting, I would also say that people want to be the owner, and
Yes,
so they
yes.
they are set in that old era of somebody needs to own it, and so some of the arguments that I'm hearing, like, when all of these people went in front of the board, there was one person that just didn't make a very good case of why he
Owned
should
it,
own it,
right?
but there's so much glowing platitudes around it.
Sure.
There's not a great description around it. They're maybe using AI to come up with their argument about why they
They
need
should
to own
do.
it, and they're reading that. And so there's the positioning of it is very soft right now, but this article that you brought to my attention really talked about that ownership across and how not only the technology, but the effect of it, the culture, how the organization needs to shift and change is really we're at this time where we need to look at it differently.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that the better approach, I think, honestly, is every person on that board or on that executive team should go in front of the board and tell the board how they are using AI for that
Yeah.
department. It's so funny. I've forgotten all about it, but I did help a team doing their EOS organization, and they were doing their EOS rocks today for second quarter. And rocks are just basically key goals for the department for the month or for the quarter. And I was facilitating the brainstorming and kind of articulating one of the things. AI was clearly one of them. And the outcome after much discussion was every single person in the group needs to
Yeah.
have an AI rock. So it's not
Yeah.
I am AI, it's how I'm doing AI for data science, how I'm doing AI for marketing tech, how am I doing
Yeah.
AI for software development? Because every vertical has more than enough work within that space to talk about it.
It's almost like AI is a highway and everybody is on it,
Yeah.
but you have to have your own lane around it. And I think about, there's a lot of coaches out there that do leadership, and leadership will always be something that we need to have a
Right,
focus on,
right, right.
but we have different lenses. My lens is different than somebody else's around leadership. And so I think that there's a parallel there for everybody needs to own it, but you have to have maybe your opinion or your lens on it so that you can provide the value from that seat, which is so powerful. It's not it's like a negotiation. There's all a seat on the table, and the best negotiators expand the pie so that you can look at it from a creative perspective, and everybody's looking at it like it's very finite, and I want to own this.
No, I think I love that analogy, that highway analogy. There's so many great ways you can spin that, but the fact that it is a highway, but every department should have their own lane. And every
Yeah,
department should think about how, some lanes are going to go faster than others. You need that IT software development lane to be the
yeah,
fast lane. Maybe HR
yeah.
can be somewhere else. Although I would argue not, considering I'm now watching live videos of people using AI to do interviews in real time. But the truth is that every department should be considering it, and everyone should have their own lane and understand that they've got a role to play.
Yeah, and I do love that analogy, Susie, good job. Because I think when you said that of the highways in LA
Right?
and how
20
fast
lanes.
they are and how many people are there, and sometimes there's a traffic hiccup,
Mhm.
and that will impact the
Oh,
business.
absolutely.
And so really thinking about that in that way and letting people own a piece of it, a part of it, because the companies that leverage it the best are the ones that are going to be taking advantage of all of
Right.
the
Yep,
asphalt.
yep, yep. And I think that, and I'm going to be done with the analogy because I don't want to beat the horse to death. But there's also this reality where, we need someone who is actually also responsible for the highway in
Yeah,
total. And what we're seeing is a chief AI officer come to the fore as in many companies. And while I think it does sound orthogonal to what we're talking about, as if that person should own everything, there is an element of somebody who is responsible for ensuring that everyone's on the highway, for ensuring
yeah,
that everyone understands that there is a lane for them.
yeah,
I'm finding that I'm getting asked to help a lot of companies to figure out where they can use AI. And it's, I imagine that it's much like, again, the PC where, you're an oil and gas company. It took them a long time to figure out that PC could be used in all the departments. Whereas maybe a company in the Valley was, they had everybody using it, whether they liked it or not. And so there is an opportunity for a company to identify somebody who can help everyone get on board, but not own it. And I think that's the difference
yeah,
between what you were seeing at your client's office versus what I'm suggesting, which is it's not ownership, it's shepherd. You need someone to
yeah.
shepherd it and manage that versus own it.
What's interesting is as we think about some of these turf wars that are happening around this is when you have pressure and when you have these emotions, it clouds your thinking. And so I also believe, like you just said, that discussion has to happen outside of the heat of the moment. It can't be related to a specific project and who owns it. It needs to be a philosophical discussion with the leadership to say, how are we going to look at this? So that
Mhm.
in the heat of the moment, everybody has already opted in to the model instead of it being created in this pressure cooker.
No, I love that. That's definitely the title of the episode, is the AI turf war,
Mhm.
because we are, managing that resource, if you will, within a company. How are we establishing the roles and responsibilities? You know, our listeners know my favorite phrase, or one of them is, good fences make good neighbors. And in this case, if we're all going to use that AI superhighway, we need to figure out what lanes we're in so we can maximize our opportunity there. And I think that's the cool part is
Yeah,
this turf war is real, and we have to
yeah.
get to a place where people appreciate a best way to manage that at the corporate level.
What comes to mind for me from a leadership coach perspective is that first team and how that the concept of first team is your first team are your colleagues
Yep.
and your second team are the people that report into you. And the reason why that's so important is because you have to make those decisions. It creates a unity that makes those people under you
Right.
not fight for their own turf wars.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
really important for that team to have this discussion and think about the effects of all of them instead of the solo, "This is for
I
me."
agree. And I think, we need to do another episode, where we talk about how do those lanes get established? How do you at a leadership level understand and learn about the AI possibilities? And what does
Yep,
that look like? And how do you really put yourself in a position to be successful when it's both a turf war and a differentiator? There's a lot to unpack there.
that's right, and how you frame it and who runs it and how
Yeah.
you do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll cover that. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Part two.
Stay tuned. Yeah, there'll be a part 2, so don't go anywhere. So, I think it's an interesting discussion, and I think we're just saying you need to explore what is this new age of AI and how is it the ownership applied across the sea level.
This turf war is happening whether you're there or not, and think about how you want to manage that at the company.
Good one.